the author series. Shiv Kumarji.
It's an absolute pleasure to do this for you guys. I just didn't know about IMUN. I have spoken at the Harvard MUN in 2019 at their annual convention in Hyderabad. So it's an absolute pleasure to do this for young students because you are the future.
No, well, thank you very much. Harvard is a taboo word out here because it is, but it is an organization that we also share the same concept of one world with. But we try to unite the world the Indian way. They look at the world little from the Western perspective, but I'm really glad that you've already interacted with young students at the Model UN conference.
Yeah.
And you know, when I started this in 2011, a lot of people told me saying, Rishabh, everybody, Model UN is an elitist concept. And, you know, it is restricted to, it's an academic simulation of the United Nations. Why are you doing things like this? Shouldn't you be focusing on academics? My parents said, finish your chartered accountancy. You have an iron and steel business to run. So why are you wasting your time in something like this? You've written in your book that academics, and you've spoken about second MBA, sir. Now, people like me have a tough time finishing the first MBA, and we believe more in terms of practical knowledge in comparison to the theoretical knowledge that you get in textbooks. How important is it to do a second MBA, because or the first MBA in the first place?
I would say, see, the MBA is a width degree, it's not a depth degree. But I think as you look ahead over the next few years, I think skills are going to be more important than degree. I think if you have a sense or if you have capability to be a leader, you have capability to lead something, you have capability to organize, you have ability to bring people together, then certainly management is something that you must consider. Because management finally is taking a set of finite resources and molding them and giving it inspiration and delivering something well beyond. That's what management is all about. And a lot of it is down to good leadership, good communication, and things like that. So that's what I would say. If you've done a first MBA and you're working in a good company, I don't think you should even pursue a second MBA. That would be my personal submission.
That's so. If you're working in a good company and you've done one MBA, then
Absolutely right.
but and how critical is it in the first place to do even an MBA in the first place? Because if you look at Virat Kohli, if you look at Priyanka Chopra, if you look at all of these people, some are 12th pass, some are not even 12th pass. They're the most successful role models. When young people look at me, they ask saying, "Why do you have a funny hairstyle?" But when Virat has the same hair, then they get inspired. So the point is, when you have so many such young role models across who essentially have not necessarily academically qualified, but
Grew up, I was the captain of my cricket team. I captained, my youth for Karnataka under 19, etc. But my dad was very clear. He said, guys, get yourself an education. After that, what you want to do is up to you. Now, going back to the examples you quoted, Priyanka Chopra is an engineer. Okay. Virat can be whatever he is. But for every Virat, there will be a million Indians who have not succeeded at cricket. Remember that. So people like the Virats are the outliers. They are not the normal. And hence you have to be clear. If you're extremely talented, you practice your craft, you do very well at it, then you reach the top. There's no doubt about it. But I think that is not the norm. The norm is much more evenly spread. And for that, I think you need something which is valuable, about which you are passionate, and you're willing to go and do everything possible to actually make that passion work for you.
So you're saying that there are people who are outliers, but sir, in order to be an outlier, in order to be a Sachin Tendulkar, in order to be, and I'm a huge cricket aficionado as well, and you've got a match at 7 p.m., which I don't know whether you're following the series, but the point is whether you look at today's role models and across walks of life. And not just in the field of cricket, but even in the field of Bollywood, and so on and so forth. The ones who've actually gone ahead and made it large in most cases are ones who've not necessarily gone with a first or the second MBA. They are at best, like I said, graduates or 12th pass. So, like you said, shouldn't it be follow your passion in comparison to being the old school Rahul Dravid, Anil Kumble type saying engineering karo, uske baad cricket jaake khelo?
So here's the thing, it depends on what you want to achieve in your life. No two people have the same output to say this is what both of us want to achieve. I think it's very different. Some
Correct.
people will fly 30,000 feet, some will fly at 40,000 feet, some will fly at 50,000 feet, to use an aircraft analogy. But if you're flying at 50,000 feet, remember the outside temperature is negative 60. Okay, and the cabin is pressurized to a particular level. If you're flying at 10,000 feet, you don't need pressurization. So you have to judge what your risk is, you have to judge what your commitment is, and you have to judge what you're willing to sacrifice. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Next is, the MBA is not a be all and end all of everything. I think there are multiple functions today, there are multiple disciplines, and thanks to the economy and the way it's growing, India is one of the larger economies in the world, number 5 or 6. I think you have space for engineering, for arts, for fashion, for creative, for people such as yourselves. You know, take IPL as an example, since you quoted cricket. I was involved with IPL for the first 12 years. Now think of IPL. It's brought a whole new ecosystem. Commentators, specialists, coaches, batting coach, fielding coach, managers, all kinds of new roles have come up. And that's what happens when it blooms. But the point is, you cannot say that I will be a Virat Kohli and that's the be all and end all. You have to think of it as maybe a 30-year career. Okay. If you are a star, either in Bollywood or you are a cricket star, etc., your career is over by the time you're 35. I'm sure it's a very successful career. You made a lot of money, but after 35, you have to live for 40 years to figure out what you want to do. But if you have a mainstream career, then you contribute to society also, and you can do a lot. That's my point.
Hey. And so taking this to the corporate world, how important is it in order to, the emphasis on academic degrees, on degrees and on education, which is the old school traditional education? Because the likes of Elon Musk today say that, college is for fun, it isn't required for learning, it is not a prerequisite at Tesla. And this is coming from a person, again, who to millennials and to Gen Z and to the younger generation essentially appeals a lot. So the reason I'm asking these questions is because when we do these conferences, whether it is in the school level at 7,500 schools or in the 160 cities that we're at, so the idea is that these kind of conversations keep coming back saying, ऋषभ, आपने तो इतनी पढ़ाई नहीं की है, तो आप क्यों बोल रहे हो कि इतनी पढ़ाई जरूरी है? Plus Elon Musk बोलता है that graduation is also not necessary. I will yet hire you in Tesla. So in the corporate world in India, do you think that this is also becoming something that is the new normal, or do you think it will take a long time to change?
I think it is changing. I think the gig world changes it. I think new age companies change it. I think startups change it. And we need to go back and ask ourselves, why do companies sieve by degree, or why do companies sieve by a particular campus or a particular institute from a particular city? Why do they do that? For them, it's a shorthand, Abhishek. That's the reason they do it, Rishabh. So they do it because it's a shorthand. Why is it a shorthand? I go to St. Stephen's, I know that I have good candidates. I go to St. Xavier's, Calcutta, I know that I have good candidates. I don't need to go to the others. So I'm saving myself the trouble and the risk by taking away the risk by going there. But I think what we are seeing increasingly now is people are taking what I call skill-based courses. People are taking 12 weeks data scientist courses or analytics courses, etc., and they're spending hard-earned money, 1 lakh, 2 lakhs of rupees to do that. Because I think India is moving, thanks to digital, to a skill-based, jobs as opposed to a degree-based job situation. I think that's the fundamental shift that I'm seeing right now.
Understood. And there is Abhishek on the chat section saying, "Hello, Mr. Shiv. Thank you for giving me a shout out."
I know. Thank you.
But you mentioned a very interesting point about people spending that 1 lakh and 2 lakh in terms of getting that skill-based education, which is so necessary for now, like you said, corporate jobs and just a career, successful career, so to say. So don't you think that this is also attributed to outdated curriculum in the school ecosystem? Because at the end of the day, we're creating well-formed minds. We're creating well-educated minds, but we're not necessarily creating well-formed minds. So the idea is that...
You're absolutely right, Rishabh. The whole of the education system needs a serious revamp. So our education system is based on mugging up and going to the exam and doing multiple entry, multiple question answers, and then getting out of it. So if you actually look at the stats, we produce about 500,000 MBAs a year. We produce more engineers than, except maybe China. But the fact is, less than 25% of our engineers are employable, less than 20% of our MBAs are employable. Why is that? Because the system is not based on practical application of concepts. It's just have I mugged up and have I been able to, put it out on the sheet of paper in front of me. So if you go back, you and I, Rishabh, cannot change the education system overnight, but we can definitely talk about, what can we do about it. I think the fundamental point is great teachers. I think till we value our teachers, things will not change. We need to pay our teachers very well. We need to respect them very well. Unfortunately, I think a lot of students tend to disrespect their teachers because they say, this teacher does not teach me anything. Okay, now what you get out of a teacher is entirely in your hands. Now, by the same token, I would ask you, why do all your parents send you to tuition after the 8th standard? Okay, and you go and pay the same teacher some extra money from some other school or college to teach you back again. So I think fundamentally, you have to be a good student. When I say you have to be a good student, I don't mean in marks alone. I mean in understanding the concepts and in respecting the institution called a school and in respecting a teacher. I think that's very important. Only then will you get the most out of your education.
Only you need to respect your teachers, and I think that's what the old Gurukul system was, right? Where technically you had Guru Dronacharya and you had Arjun, but these days we even if we don't see teachers necessarily, probably some don't see all teachers in the same light as Arjun saw Guru Dronacharya. But isn't this also, sir, the fault of the British in a way? The fault of so many years of colonization and that mindset that we are second-rate citizens in our own country. And just to give you a small example, sir, they made the mistake once calling me to IIM Ahmedabad and to give a lecture to some of the students. And at that juncture, I noticed something very unique, which was this was at that point in time, the graduating steps at IMA were called Howard steps. So yeah. I'm not an aspiring politician, though we have many who have graduated from IIM to join politics. But the idea, sir, is that shouldn't we be shouldn't we be more proud about our own culture, our own heritage from where we come from, as against having things such as on the graduating steps of IMA, which is by far the most premier business school in our country, we yet call it the Howard steps?
That's okay. That's because there was a lot of collaboration between IIM Ahmedabad and Harvard. That was the reasons, but don't worry about that. See, one of the things your generation, Rishabh, as well as all the people listening in, you are a global generation. You are not an India generation. You have to be the global best. Go back to what you said, and this is the contradiction in the logic which young people use. You talked of Priyanka Chopra, who's a global ambassador. You talked of Virat Kohli, a global acknowledged cricket champion. He's not a Ranji. So your stage, I submit to all of you, is global. And especially in a digital world, your ability to network, your ability to influence the world, what you're doing right as MUN is a great example of that. And I would urge all of you to say, the only way you can bring India to the world is if you yourselves think of yourselves as global citizens and not bound by either Delhi or Karnataka or Maharashtra or West Bengal. That's what I would submit to you.
Fair, sir. But in that sense, when we go abroad, when we go to the United States of America, or when we represent, when we go to the World Economic Forum, in your case, and when you speak out there, you speak on behest of an Indian multinational. You speak as an Indian because that technically is your identity. So, which is why I'm all for model United Nations. But that's what I was once talking to late former President Pranab Mukherjee, who said the same thing, saying that मॉडल यूनाइटेड नेशंस तो ठीक है, आप MUN करते हैं, पर ऑन ग्राउंड क्या करते हैं? So that's why we changed Model UN to Movement to United Nations, where essentially the idea is to bring about tangible change, and it's called India's International Movement to United Nations, because shouldn't the identity start with India first, international, and then of course you are trying to bring nations together, as against the fact that you're a global citizen first and then an Indian citizen thereafter.
So think about it this way. Your generation is a knowledge generation. Okay. The agriculture economy of the past was about tilling the land, being hardworking, using the oxen or whatever it was. Then came the Industrial Revolution, which was all about machines and productivity. Today, it's all about knowledge, information, insights. Okay, so India has a particular thing to offer you in terms of its culture, in terms of the upbringing, in terms of its values, and you must always cherish that and always hold that dear. When you go abroad, what comes to the table is your Indianness in terms of your values, the way you respect others, the way you listen to others, the way you treat others. That's the important part. But if you are living in a knowledge economy, you need to learn the best global concepts. You cannot be left behind. So Indianness will only take you a particular distance, but Indianness with a global outlook will take you really far. It's like, for example, let me give you the cricket analogy you talked about. Indian wickets are dry, boring. You can score 100 Indian wickets. Australian wickets are bouncy. Okay. Now Virat Kohli has to know how to play the bouncy wicket. Similarly, English wickets are seaming. So Virat Kohli needs to adjust to that. He cannot go and say, my Indian wickets are dull and boring. So will you produce dull and boring wickets for me? And that's Indianness. That doesn't work like that.
Fair, sir. I concede to your point, but at the same point in time, sir, Virat Kohli, to become Virat Kohli and to get selected into the cricket team, first has to score on spinning tracks. He doesn't necessarily have to go and play in Melbourne and the Lords. He needs to first play and perform in India. So at the end of the day, like you rightly said, India's culture, the heritage, and so on and so forth is what also we should remember. As much as we globalize outlook, at the same point in time, localizing outlook is also equally important. But sir, let me come to another aspect, sir. You speak about money as the metric of valuing, and I'm sorry, I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm no Karan Thapar. I'm just asking you all the questions on behest of the young people. So none of these are prepared by me. This is a research team, and that Abhishek. But sir, I must also ask you. You speak about money as the metric of value, not valuing success. You say that you argue that you should not chase money and you should chase knowledge. So, but in my very humble opinion, don't you think that all of this is very good in terms of academic discussion and so-called gyan per se? Because at the end of the day, a person who's graduating right out of college is obviously going to look at fending for himself first. If he or she is not coming from a very privileged background, so to say, which is about 80-90% of young people who are graduating. Which is why, sir, don't you think that this is very good when it comes to books and discussions, and very difficult to actually implement, that don't chase money and chase knowledge?
No, I didn't say chase knowledge. I said don't chase money. Chase being good. Okay, which is being the best at your craft. One part of that is knowledge. One part of that is application. One part of that is constant reinvention of yourself in that craft. That's what I meant. So let me explain to you. Why is this fascination with money? The fascination with money is because Economic Times, maybe Fortune, everybody prints articles on who are the most paid CEOs. Okay. And we talk of who are the richest people in the world, things like that. That's what captures us. Every campus then report what are the highest paying jobs on campus. Okay. So we seduced by that. We start thinking that money is the parameter by which society judges us. I would submit that contribution should be the parameter by which you judge yourself, and society will judge you. Money is transient. It will be with you at one period of time. It might not be with you at another period of time. Second, why do people chase money? When they start out, they say, you know what, I've got 3 jobs and the best paying job is X company. Let me take that. Why? Because it's very easy to convince your parents and your neighborhood and your relatives to say, you know what, I had 3 offers. I took the highest paying offer. Because that's a no-brainer, right? Nobody will argue against that. I always suggest that you must join a company which has great culture and will teach you, and you're willing to learn. If you do that, you will multiply your earnings dramatically, not ordinarily. Next, if you look at any career, except maybe a Bollywood or a cricket career, make money when you're 30. Most of the careers you tend to make around the age of 40 and after that. Okay, so it's a long haul. Okay, and the other point I make in the book repeatedly is that when you're young, please don't take on debt. A lot of people take on debt to buy a fancy car, to have a fancy holiday, etc. Living on debt is living on an expensive credit card. Remember, you have to pay it back. There's no free lunch. So till you don't have the means to pay it back, there's no point in chasing that. That's what I say.
But sir, again, you mentioned the fact, and this is very interesting that you mention it, that don't live on an expensive credit card. And I wish this advice was heeded by the United States of America. The rest of the world would have been saved on multiple occasions. 2008 and even in the recent past, where a lot of crises have been caused because of debt. But at the same point in time, sir, when a young person is aspirational, a young person is going to look at, like you rightly said, what society shows him. Now, you mentioned about the Fortune list, the Forbes list, the Economic Times awards, and so on and so forth. You're seeing the rich and the famous. You're seeing all those people who've made it really big in life. And then you suddenly see things like Bitcoin. You see role models such as Elon Musk. And I have nothing against Elon Musk. I have nothing against Bitcoin. But at the same point in time, you see overnight success. You don't see the long struggle that these people have gone through. And which is why this entire generation, which comprises me and everybody in and around, majority of them, feel that what's the harm and what's wrong in the overnight success phenomenon. And I'm asking you because we've seen so many overnight successes. Example, a social media influencer, sir, who till yesterday is nobody, but suddenly overnight, because of one big hit, becomes the talk of the town and earns millions. And what's wrong in being the next Neha Kakkar? Why does everybody have to be the old school Riaz and the old school Sonu Nigam, which took such a long period of time to become, or a Lata Mangeshkar that finally became the name that is Lata Mangeshkar? So your perspective on that, and I'm sorry I'm asking all these questions, but these are the questions that come to me as well.
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic that you're asking me these questions, because these are the type of questions which have a good conversation. So number one, if you look at classical world of success, whichever way you define it, there is nothing called an overnight success in a very fast world like advertising, in a fast world like movies, will take 10 years. Okay. Shah Rukh is 55 today. Struggled a lot to get to where he is. He was an overnight success. He did Fauji, he did television, etc. Same thing with Salman Khan. Salman Khan was second director. Okay, Hrithik Roshan, director, Karan and movie. So they all struggled their way through. Amitabh Bachchan struggled, went to the top, fell down, came back up again through KBC, and now he's stabilized. So there is nothing called an overnight success, number one. Success only comes to people whose core is very strong. The basics of your craft have to be very, very strong. Whatever that be. That can be fashion design, that can be acting, that can be chef, it can be advertising, whatever it is, you're very strong in your core. If you're not the best in your core, you're not going to have a long career. An overnight success, okay, you'll be like a shooting star. You'll go up and you'll come down. Let me give you two examples. Okay, and if you talk to people, people will say the second more talented. So if you looked at a combination called Sachin Tendulkar and Vinod Kambli, okay, in a career, and who won the admiration of the world? Tendulkar. I think Kambli was just as talented, but he didn't apply himself to the craft the way Tendulkar did. So you'll have thousands of examples like this. And every time we talk, we will always see today's era is about Elon Musk. Yesterday's era was about Bill Gates. Day before yesterday was about somebody else. They will always be the outliers. But when you're talking of a life where you contribute, you take care of your family, you contribute to society, you contribute to your alma mater, etc., then the core matters. The core is about being a good human being. The core is about being strong in whatever you want to do. like you're doing this program today. If you didn't come prepared for this program, if you're not good at articulating it, if you're not good at asking the right questions, nobody will log into your program. As simple as that. They might have one program they will follow, but they won't follow you regularly. Remember that. So we have to keep scoring runs on the board for us to be good.
But I'm only learning, and as long as we get guests like you, they don't come for me; they come for the guests. So that makes mine. But yes, but no, but I get your points, and the reason why I ask this is because, sir, you write in your book also, and you mentioned this in many of these interviews that I've seen, is that, sir, up until 30, you should chase becoming better, or you should chase knowledge in a way. And if a manager has a choice between chasing a better, higher pay and a job which is going to teach him more, then up until 30 you should choose a job which teaches him more. So with a maximum alumni reaching the age of 30, 32, so the vast majority are below the age of 30. So we feel, because we see Mark Zuckerberg again, and I'm just giving you the examples of what we see. At 30 is the new 18, in the sense that if Zuckerberg could do it at 18, why do we need to keep chasing knowledge all the way up till 30? Why can't we start things on our own at 18, 19, 20? When in India also, sir, the examples of startup founders, and whether it be Ritesh Agarwal or anybody else who's been associated or not to the organization, we see so many of the successes even in the field of business. Do you think that it should only be chasing knowledge till 30, or do you think that people can be ready to start up at even 18 or 19?
You can start up. There's nothing wrong in that. Please don't get me wrong. And if you read the book, what do I say? I say that you must have a good idea, a good product idea, good service idea. I know 4 of you just don't sit over a beer or a cup of tea and say we'll now start something. The worst thing to start a copycat idea. Okay, doesn't work. You have to know how a corporation works, how to run a company. Okay, how does a profit and loss account work? Okay, how do you manage people? One of the most difficult things, which everybody overestimates but consistently deliver well below, is managing people. Managing people is not easy. Like, for example, let me tell you. So you are asking me questions. My reaction can be confrontation, right? My reaction can be collaboration. My reaction can be explanation. Okay, when you are 18 and 20, if you have that in you, the ability to work with people very, very well, by all means start. But you will learn through trial and error, is my point, etc. Let me give you, some examples again, since you talked of, very few child prodigies make it successfully right through. Okay, let me give you an example. Mozart was a child prodigy who did exceedingly well. Tiger Woods was a child prodigy. He started at 3, had a fantastic career. Unfortunately, met with an accident, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. Tendulkar was a child prodigy. Let's look at other child prodigies. Boris Becker was a child prodigy, but he petered out. He was fantastic. He won Wimbledon when he was in his teens. That was outstanding. Now look at the other end of it, which is the point I'm making. Take Roger Federer. Roger Federer is 36, still winning Grand Slams. Why? He's paced himself very well. He's been an absolute role model. He's really learned his craft, learned to adapt to the new situation, and done very well. So the point is, longevity matters just as much as short wins.
The longevity of a person matters as much as the short term per se, and the short term benefit.
We get carried away by the short term win, but we don't really celebrate people who've done, the longevity. For example, take somebody which you quoted, Abdul Kalam, President Abdul Kalam. I've also met him, etc. Look at what he went through and where he reached, right? When he started, wherever he was, from humble beginnings, I don't think he ever thought he would be president, right? But he, made his way through. He contributed to the country, to the space program, and did exceedingly well as president. Okay, that is what legacy is about.
No, but then don't you think that the media is generally, people are projecting and portraying the wrong icons, the wrong role models are being projected, or the role models that make overnight success are being put as the poster boys or the poster girls for the youth? which then, whether it be you like Roger Federer, I like Rafa Nadal, both started early, both have a long career, both are great examples. Dravid, again a personal favorite who I've always looked up to, is somebody that I admire both for his education, and then of course now that he's had such a distinguished career and now serves at the NCA. But sir, Rahul Dravid is never on the front page of a magazine now. You have different examples that are being set for the youth, which to a large extent, and in not just mainstream media, and so this is why I wanted to ask you this question. He said, don't you think on social media, and you've seen the evolution of the mobile from its inception almost in India to what it has reached today, don't you think the internet and don't you think mobile and technology has aided in a wrong way in terms of projecting a very different image of what role models should be for young people?
That's a great question, Rishabh. And I was just reading some data from America and across the world. The biggest concern people today have is, where do I get genuine news? Remember that. That's the biggest concern people have. So people are sick and tired of this puffery. People are sick and tired of this front page. People are saying, media has been bought out. Nobody, full stop. So whom do they trust? People like themselves. They trust their friends to tell them the truth. So whatever their friends, popularize or say this is a good product or a good service, you should use it, they tend to gravitate towards that. So we are coming to a situation which is a full circle now. Media had a role to play. Most people saw media as objective maybe 30 years ago. Today, nobody sees media as objective. If you look at the Edelman Trust report, if you look at trust in government, trust in media, trust in NGOs, all three has dropped. The highest trust today after the pandemic is actually in corporations, in companies. Why? Because consumers are saying, I give you my hard-earned money so I can hold you accountable. But I cannot hold the government, media, or NGO accountable. So we have come a full circle. Privacy is a big concern. Whom do I trust with news? And what is genuine news and what's fake news is on top of people's minds.
No, and I may say, I may add to that and say that another role model that I've looked up all my life, Mr. Birla, whom you work with, when I see him, I see that if he would have been finance minister, probably we would have had a very different outlook to a lot of things in India today. But then again, sir, this is slightly off topic, but let me ask you this question: why do not more people from corporate India, the ones who especially have the image and who command the respect, like of course now Mr. Tata may not enter politics or serve as president and so on and so forth, somebody like you also who had a distinguished career in corporate India, why is that shift from corporate India to politics never happening? I don't see that with young or old. If you're a business leader, come from a business family, or you made it large in the field of business, you never go into politics.
That's very true. In 2013, actually, believe it or not, when I left Nokia, Mr. Sachin Pilot, who was then the telecom minister, and I knew well, was a wonderful man. He was the junior minister for telecom. He actually asked me in one of the conferences, he said, Shiv, do you want to pick up another job or do you want to follow in the footsteps of Nandan Nilekani? That's what he asked me. Okay. And I did discuss it with a few friends, etc. And they said, look, Shiv, that's not your cup of tea. You'll be successful there. So fair enough. So these people knew me well enough. So I didn't pursue it. Okay. So contributing to one's country is, the ultimate goal. But you can do it in many ways. So I might not be in politics, but I do contribute to educational institutions. I serve on the board of a few contribution, and that's what you need to say, which I can contribute to society, maybe not by shaping policy, but by contributing to it.
No, sir, in specific, but at the same point in time, sir, what I was mentioning is, and like you mentioned, there are very few people like Sachin. There are very few people, even on the other side, on the BJP, who actually, somebody like a Piyush Goyal, who would probably come and ask saying, why are you not joining the party? Larger question is this, that whether the politician wants you in the party or not, why aren't the industrialists, why aren't the old school business leaders in our country, world over also, when you see this trend, why do they not join politics if you want to bring about that change? Because at the end of the day, you could help the way or be particular manner or advice on policy, but at the end of the day, he's the one who's calling the shots. So he's the one who's. Why is there nobody from corporate India as such? Where, I mean, when I say nobody, it's like you've got one in Nandan Nilekani or you've got a couple in England, but at the same point in time, it's far and few and too few, because, like you said, the trust in corporations is there, trust in government, not just not this, but across the world. Trust in government is decreasing, trust in journalism is decreasing, but trust in corporate India yet remains.
Yeah. So there are America is a good example where the president can choose whoever he wants to be on the cabinet to serve. And that's why they take people in economics or social welfare, whatever it is. The other country which has done exceedingly well on this, Rishabh, which I must salute in the world, is Singapore. If you look at Singapore, the best bureaucrats, they are paid much more than anybody else. So jobs so aspirational and so value driven that they get the very best talent, they're paid, and they're just not bothered about anything but doing the right thing for Singapore. So I think the enabling boundary conditions, both in America and Singapore, are good examples. I know a friend of mine, a lady called Poonam Kaul, who used to work with me both in Nokia and PepsiCo as my communications director. Okay. And she's going to do some excellent work in that area. More professionals, getting in there. But I think the numbers are too small. You are absolutely right on that.
The numbers are too small, and I know you're contributing in a large way to nation building, but we'd be equally happy seeing you in the Rajya Sabha. But at the same point in time, because I think there are more people like you that are needed. But let me change the topic and come to something that you've written about also, which is overseas job versus job in India. And this in the 70s, 80s and 90s was a blind bet where people just used to go abroad and the brain drain used to happen. But do you where people stay back for a job in India? And
so your quality of life in India, if you balance out money plus support system, whether it is parents, in-laws, maids, drivers, whatever you want to call it, is an outstanding support system. So today, a lot of people don't want, lifestyle is just as good. But I would urge you, if you want to go abroad in your early 30s. I think you need to experience the world. You need to see how different cultures work. You need to see how different things work in various different corporations. Going in the early 30s would be a fantastic, I think, learning experience.
Going in the early 30s would be a fantastic learning experience. And sir, let me ask you the last question. It's basically the first thought when I say the following words. What's the first word that comes to your mind, sir, when I say the following words? Because this is not a Rajdeep Sardesai, Arnab Goswami interview, so we have to lighten it up a little bit. So when I say success, what's the first thing that comes to your mind, sir?
To me, it's contribution.
So when I say money, what's the first word that comes to your mind, sir?
So, like again, I've said this in the book. Here's the thing. The Beatles wrote a lovely song many years ago that money can't buy me love. But I'll tell you one thing, having studied this topic deeply, okay, money can safeguard you against sorrow. Just because you have money, you'll not be happy. Trust me.